Okay. Mr. Mayor, we're at agenda item number 1, which is the parking restrictions mock city council agenda item.
Council meeting will come to order.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, tonight we have before you consideration of establishment of parking restrictions on Fallbrook Street and Brookdale Street. Our Public Works staff has gone out to speak to the residents on both of those streets, as well as speak to the residents in the multifamily apartment complex. Tonight what you have before you is a proposed parking restriction plan, which would restrict parking for non-residents along Fallbrook Street and Brookdale Street. The Public Works Director staff did do a survey of those living on those streets, and the adequate number of yes votes were received to meet our policy on establishing permit parking. This concludes my staff report, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I think each of us will take a turn asking questions, starting over here to my right. If you don't have a question, you can move on to the next person.
Mr. Mayor, it might be beneficial to the council if you've heard from the public first, because they might, some of the questions might be driven by the comments made by the members of the public.
I didn't know we were going to have public comment. Okay. I stand corrected. Public comment. Does anybody have a public comment?
Yes, Jane Johnson, followed by Z. Trasia.
And each speaker has 1 minute to provide their comment, and at 15 seconds, the yellow light will go on, indicating you have 15 more seconds, and then we ask that you wrap up when the red light flashes.
Good evening. My name is Jane Johnson. Thank you for taking the time to be here and to listen to me this evening. I am a resident of Lake Forest, and I think what I'd like to ask you to do tonight is really have some empathy for those of us that do live in a multifamily situation. In my particular situation, I'm a single mom. I have 2 daughters, 16 and 18, who both drive, and unfortunately we don't feel safe at night to have to walk a long distance to get home. It's scary for us, and in addition, I'm aware that the gang activity in Lake Forest has gone up, and over the last 2 years, our rape occurrences went from 1 to 12. And I think that a woman and her daughter should feel safe when they walk home, and they should not be forced to have to park potentially a half mile to a mile away from their home. Thank you.
Z. Trasia, followed by Katie Cariello.
All right, good evening. My name is Z. Trasia. I'm a resident of Lake Forest. I think these are public streets that belong to everybody, don't just belong to certain people. And you know, we all should have access to them, and especially if we have guests over or we have people over, we need to have parking for them. We can't just tell them not to come. So that's my comment for tonight, and I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Katie Cariello, followed by Hugh Everhart.
Hello, my name is Katie Cariello, and I am I live in Lake Forest, and I also live in a multi-unit housing situation. I cannot afford to purchase a home at this time. However, I call the city of Lake Forest my home, and I would say that to ask me to park, again, a half mile or a mile away of my home that I chose to live in is a lot to ask. So I also ask that you please reconsider the parking restriction in Lake Forest to allow anyone who lives in the city of Lake Forest to park where they would like on the public streets. So thank you.
Hugh Everhart, followed by Gary.
Hi, my name is Hugh Everhart, and I'm a resident of Lake Forest, and I'm a homeowner that lives near this apartment complex. And while I understand that it's important for people to be able to be safe and be able to reach their homes safely, the way it impacts my neighborhood is that there is a safety issue with trying to back out of driveways. We can't see traffic coming quite as easily when there's cars piled up along the curb. Recently, the Postal Service informed us that if somebody's parked in front of our post office or our mailbox, they will not deliver mail, and we will have to go down to the post office, which is very difficult and unfortunate. Also, we've had a problem with garbage cans getting knocked over by cars backing into them as they're trying to squeeze in places where they just don't fit. And lastly, the zoning for parking requirements should really handle the need for sufficient parking at apartment complexes and not put it on the homeowners located nearby. Thank you very much.
Gary, followed by Carol Ann.
Good evening. Name is Gary Russell, resident of Lake Forest. I live on Fallbrook. I know you're very, very busy. You have the staff report in front of you on this problem, and I just want to reiterate the fact that 50% of the parking structure is vacant within the I can't remember the name of the complex, but the Cedar Glen Association. Your staff determined that 50% of the parking area in the complex is vacant, and this process would get that parking lot fulfilled with people living there. Thank you.
Carol Ann.
Good evening. I'm Carol Ann, and I'm a resident of Lake Forest. I just want you to know that I've worked really, really hard to buy a single home, and it's my joy, and it's also my financial investment. So I have a vested interest in keeping up the best appearances and so on and so forth. And I think it really is incumbent upon the developers of the multifamily places to provide adequate parking. And if they can't provide adequate parking and someone else is so kind to donate a lot, as this other organization did, then perhaps they should look into security, maybe from some kind of homeowners fees or collection fees to provide security for people so that they can feel safe when they go back and forth in the evening. Thank you.
There are no further speakers.
So we can ask questions.
Yes.
Okay, we'll start on my right.
You mentioned that someone had donated a lot. Could you expand? I'm not quite sure what we're talking about. Ian,
Mr. Mayor
last speaker.
and members of the council, the Cedar Glen Association created additional parking on site. I believe that's what the speaker was referring to.
So is it my understanding that there is on-site parking? They don't have to relocate a half a mile or a mile away?
I'd like our Public Works Director to answer that question, please.
Mayor and members of the City Council, yes, there is parking available. We ensured that when we sent out the ballots to the surrounding neighborhood and collected the ballots and received a positive response, overwhelming response of 75% agreement that there is available parking spaces nearby, not over a half mile away or a quarter mile away.
So just to continue to focus on the availability of parking in the apartment complex, so there would be sufficient parking available in the complex for, say, every adult to have a car there? Or what is the ratio of people to parking spaces? Do you have?
Mayor and members of the City Council, there is adequate parking available for all the members. It is just not located within the closest range of where they live, but there's adequate parking available for every member. I think there's 2 parking spots available per household.
Does that 2 spaces, is that for the multi-family housing, or is that for the individual housing?
That is for the multifamily housing.
What is the average size of the individual housing garage parking spaces?
They are generally 2-car garages.
And do they include driveways as well?
Yes.
So there would be an average of 4 parking spaces per house?
I would agree that, yes, that would be right.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like our police chief to comment on one of the residents' comments about crime in the area. Mr. Police Chief?
Mayor and members of the council, we don't have the information on all the crime statistics for that specific area right now, but we'd be happy to bring them to the next meeting.
Any other comment?
Yes. Okay, so we have established that the single-family homes have capability for 4 cars, correct? Okay, then the apartment complex, they're allowed 2 cars per apartment.
Correct.
But there's 50% vacancy currently within that apartment complex, and people are still parking on the streets.
That's correct.
I have a question, if that's all right. Are these residents in the multifamily housing? Are they being what is keeping them from parking within the multifamily housing units?
Convenience. Mainly, it's a convenience of the proximity to where they live.
Okay, is the 50%, does that refer to the occupancy rate of the apartments? In other words, half of the apartments are empty, or half of the parking lot is empty?
Half of the apartments are empty.
The apartments. So if they were full, then the lot would presumably be full also?
Yes, there is sufficient parking to capacity if it was filled.
If the apartments were full?
If the apartments were filled, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Seems to me, until we have a more complete information from the police chief, since I understand the information is pending, is that correct?
Mayor, member of the City Council, it is. We're not instructed to bring this information with us this evening, so we have to, in order to give you an accurate report, bring that next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we table the motion until our next meeting.
Is there a second? The motion is made to table this discussion.
What's that?
All right, we have a second. All in favor? You can press their buttons. All opposed, you can press your button. And you can abstain if you care to. You could not vote at all. Okay. What happened here? Did I hit the wrong button?
No, you're actually Mr. Rosenberg.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I got a little confused here. The motion passes.
So the motion was to table the item, and that motion passed 4-1. So this item will be considered at a future agenda item once the police department provides the statistics on the crime in the general area. There are no further announcements for the agenda, so it would be appropriate to adjourn the meeting.
Meeting adjourned. Very good. Have you really? Yeah.